Hello and welcome to the Recovery Matters podcast from CCAR, the podcast where putting recovery first is always the goal. Here we present interviews, discussions, stories, and speeches to cultivate the understanding and acceptance of the power, hope, and healing of recovery from alcohol and other addictions. Here are your hosts, Phil and Sandy Valentine.
Phil, you have your Birds of Paradise shirt on today.
Those aren't birds of paradise, those are flowers.
That's what a bird of paradise is. There you go.
Yeah.
That's the name of that kind of flower.
All right.
So
Why do they name a flower after a bird?
Because the flower reminded them of a bird.
Okay. Flutter by.
Really deep conversation this morning.
Flutter by.
And then you have, I see what you're doing here. You have your cheeseburger socks on.
Well, they're black with
yellow.
yellow.
Then we have Cheeseburgers in Paradise. Do you know where that's from?
I think I do.
Well, not everybody might.
And Jimmy Buffett, of course.
Jimmy Buffett, yeah.
Yes.
And so we're camping in Rhode Island this weekend, which has nothing to do with Paradise, but it is a nice place to visit.
It's closer to Paradise than Manchester, Connecticut. Can I say that on air?
No, you shouldn't say that about our
I did
hometown.
already.
It's been good to us.
It has been good, and I've been there since 1959.
Yeah. So that shirt's becoming very familiar to me, as are the socks. And one of the things I was thinking about this morning as we get ready for our podcast guest was that all CCAR people feel familiar to me. Like, I feel like I know them already. And I thought that I had met our guest today, but I hadn't. But it's just that feeling that CCAR gives that everybody's connected. And so it's like...
You've never met Dominic?
I don't think I have.
Do you want to say hi, Dominic?
Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you.
Are you a little nervous?
I am a little nervous. I always get nervous when I have mics in front of me for some reason.
But I know you like to tell a story or two. That's definitely in your repertoire.
And you have a great voice for this.
I love to talk.
You-
Phil said so.
When did I say that?
When we were on the phone, when you were telling me about the podcast.
Oh, did I?
You're like, but you really like to talk a lot, so you should come on.
Yeah.
I also haven't seen that CCAR swag, which I like a lot.
Oh, thank you.
The black and white version.
That's his design, right?
It is.
Right.
It is. Well, because, now they do, but before they didn't make size clothes. I'm a big guy, so they didn't, and my head's very big too, so the hats and the CCAR swag actually didn't fit me. So I asked if I could make something for myself. Plus, I like the uniform look.
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah, I like it.
You do.
I do.
So what's your role here at CCAR now?
Now I am a Department of Corrections recovery coach for the initiative that we have, and I also do with the Manchester Police Department and the Hope Initiative.
Mm-hmm.
I also work with guys that either have overdosed or have somehow got in touch with the law or have come into the police station. They still have that and ask for help. Mm-hmm. And they can turn in whatever substances they're using and just ask for help and stuff like that.
That's awesome.
He does that in Manchester.
Yeah, our town, which is a great town.
Yes, it's a great town. So what is it? The City of Village Charm. City of Village Charm and also Silk City.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So you say you're a Department of Correction recovery coach, but you are a CCAR recovery coach that works primarily in the Department of Correction and the program we have there, just to make that little distinction.
Yes.
Right. So we like to start at the very beginning, and you've listened to some of our podcasts and watched some of them. So I'm going to ask you, what was Little Dom like? And maybe I'll ask something a little irreverent. Were you ever little? No.
No. Actually, that's perfectly fine. I actually was very small. I was very small when I was a kid.
You were?
I was. And actually, so I actually didn't gain weight till I got into recovery.
Oh, wow.
So I was very, very thin all the way up until I got into recovery.
But you always had a big head.
I did.
Because
humongous head.
I've had a big head too, and once you have, it doesn't matter what size your body is, your head stays the same.
We had one
We have
child.
3 big heads right here.
We had one child with the biggest head Rockville General Hospital had ever seen. They had to go out and get a handmade hat for him because he didn't fit in any of the newborn babies.
That was Matthew.
Yes.
We always talk about Matthew
Yeah.
on this podcast.
Unintentionally.
Yeah, our big-headed baby.
I think my head got bigger as I got older. I don't think it was big right off the start, but it's definitely big now. I'm close to an 8. That's pretty big.
You know, I found a whole study when he was a baby because his older siblings gave him a little bit of a hard time for his big head. And there's a study that shows that
right.
does equate to brain size and capacity and intellect. So it's not a bad thing.
So you were a skinny little kid.
I was a skinny little kid.
And where'd you grow up?
I grew up I was born in Jacksonville, Florida, but we moved to Springfield, Mass when I was 2 or 3.
Mm-hmm.
So I predominantly grew up in Springfield, but just about everywhere around that area.
Mm-hmm.
I was in Springfield for a long time. Then my mom tried to move us kind of to the suburb area of Agawam, and when I got kicked out of those schools, I had to go to Chicopee. So I've lived kind of just about everywhere. And then we lived in Springfield again when I was older.
Well, you did skip over a little piece there when I got kicked out of those schools.
I did. So yeah, I had a rough. I was kind of bad when it came to school. Very good in other things, but I guess as somebody in recovery, I've always had a little bit of an issue with. I've had an authority complex, I think you could call it. So for me, teachers and different stuff, I always had and I like to question everything, and sometimes that drives people crazy.
Mm-hmm.
But not like in a bad way. I guess when I was a kid, it might have came off, that way. But, I like to kind of question everything and study everything. And, I like to be a free thinker.
Did you grow up living with your mom and dad?
Just my mom. My dad, my dad was, my dad actually died from the disease of addiction, much older in life, but my mom had to separate from my dad when I was a little kid because my dad was, he was an alcoholic, but he was also he had opioid use disorder, so he would go on, binges like we do and stuff, but for the most part, he suffered from alcoholism all the way up till he passed away from disease failure, liver failure.
So did you see him a lot growing up?
No, here and there. My dad wasn't really around too much. Through the process of recovery, I forgive him. I realized that he had, he suffered from the same disease that I do. But no, he wasn't around much. And when he was around, he made it quite clear that he was unhappy to be around. I don't know. My dad and my relationship were very strained, and he always forgot my birthday, and it was a deep-rooted resentment that took me like 4 steps to get over.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, I detect some emotion in your voice, and I know that you're a dad.
I am.
And I think you're a little bit different. You probably have a little bit different techniques than your father had, because I see pictures of you and it's just so adorable, right?
Thank you.
Yeah.
Do you have siblings?
My brother, I had one brother. He passed away in early recovery from congestional heart failure.
Oh, wow.
When I was a kid, my brother had Hodgkin's lymphoma, and I basically, most of my young life, I grew up in the hospital. Like, I remember being a little kid. Like, my memories of being a little kid that I actually remember are being in that, like, family room with the Galaga game. They had, like, a free arcade game, and that, like, I just remember video games and always feeling like my brother was going to die when I was a kid.
Mm-hmm.
That's a lot. Was he older or younger?
He's my older brother, a couple years.
Yeah.
A couple years older. So that was a tough one for me.
Do you talk about this a lot?
I sometimes when I tell my story, I kind of just tell it from like my adulthood. I try not to, but I'm okay talking about it with you.
Okay.
Yeah.
So what's the real tough part for you? I'll just dive right into the tough question.
Yeah, the tough part is when I finally made an amends to my brother, I only got to spend like 3 years with him.
Mm-hmm.
So when we finally had a relationship where we talked every night and became like we were when we were real young.
Like brothers.
Yeah, he ended up passing away. So.
Mm-hmm. And was that a surprise, or was it sudden?
No, he's been sick a majority of his life.
Yeah.
But they told him when I believe he was 12, because I was like 8 and he was 3 years older. So when he was 12, they said he only had a couple months to live. And he lived till I believe he was 35 or 36
Wow.
when he passed away.
Mm-hmm.
So my brother was a fighter for sure.
Yeah, definitely.
So that was 24 years. He
Yeah.
lived way past what they said.
Right. So you're talking about, so you had this going on at home. You didn't like authority. You got kicked out of schools, and asked to move, or
I was expelled from Agawam
mm-hmm.
School system, and Chicopee was the only one that would take me.
For what? Do you remember?
Fighting, suspensions.
You're a fighter.
Smoking dope.
Yeah.
All kinds of stuff. You know.
And how old were you?
They
when
never
this
caught
happened?
me smoking dope, but I'd go into class and the teachers would smell it and be like, "Get out of my classroom."
How old were you when all this was happening?
How old are you when you're in high school? I don't know.
Yeah, you were
13,
mid-teens.
Yeah, it was like
15.
13, 14,
to 18,
15.
maybe.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you remember the first time you used and what the circumstances were?
It was for fun. So when I first started using, it was for fun. So I was probably 12 actually when I first smoked weed
Mm-hmm.
and drank alcohol.
Mm-hmm.
But it was for fun. Just, you know, me and the guys wanted to party like we were older. I don't know. I'll tell you this. I never knew when I was that young that it was going to trigger a lifelong addiction.
Mm-hmm.
I definitely didn't know that. We were just trying to have fun, and I do share that a lot when I speak at different, you know, meetings and stuff, fellowships, and I did not know that it was going to trigger this horrific addiction for the next, 15, 16 years. So.
Yeah. My son often talks about working recently, and I think I shared this before on other podcasts, on what's fun. You know, and you use that how do you define fun, and why do it? Because I thought it was fun too, and I knew that when I used when I was 12, 13, 14, I think I first really got drunk at age 13, that I thought it was fun. Well, man, my concept of fun was so off. I mean, it wasn't. Did you have fun when you drank? Would you just say that?
So I could do
See the
things.
light go on in her eye. She remembered something.
Well, it got rid of my inhibitions, so I could fully participate in whatever was happening.
Mm-hmm.
Because I was very, I thought I was shy, but introverted, uncomfortable in my own skin. So the minute I drank, I put on some kind of, cast on a new self that allowed me to fully do whatever it was. Which was usually a choice harmful to myself, potentially others, but worked for a while.
Yeah, it made me, when I first used, made me feel good. I don't know if I was to the point where it made me feel better yet, but I loved the feeling it gave me. I loved being out of control. I loved the buzz and the high and being dizzy and goofy and yeah. You too?
Yeah, I absolutely agree with both of you, actually. So I've thought about it a lot. I mean, some of it could be partly I wanted to escape from different things that were going on in life because it was one of my one of my ways of my coping mechanisms. It could have been part that, part I loved to laugh and goof. When we first started getting stoned, or we would laugh and we would throw food at each other, and we would just like it was, like I guess fun was just having that connection. But I didn't realize. Wow. I didn't realize that I could have that connection without the substance, and I think soon the substance controlled any connection that I had.
Right.
And I think that's where the addiction set in for me.
Did you have a crew you hung around with?
Oh, yeah.
So describe some of the crew members, and do you remember any of them?
Yeah, when I was real young, I used to skateboard with some guys.
You were a skateboarder?
I was, well, when I was young.
Yeah, wow.
I mean, I could probably still. I tried to ollie a little while ago, and as big as I am, I did pull one off. I think it was 2-3 years ago. Somebody had a skateboard.
So what's an ollie?
Ollie is just when you kick the board up and kind of do like a hop.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I was like, I still got it. Didn't kill myself.
Mm-hmm. It's funny driving here today. I saw Hartford has those scooters that are connected. You can grab a scooter and take it, electric scooter. And I was like, I wonder. And then I'm like, no.
Right.
I fall more than I stand. So
should have took it for a spin.
I might.
I see him cruising when I'm at the Hartford zone.
You can just hit the and do they have a barcode thing and just bang. But anyway, so
after the podcast, we'll all go.
I want to hear some of your crew members, your skateboarding crew.
Oh, so one of my really good friends was Jason, and Jason. We all had the long hair and who was that? Kyle, Jake, I forget. There's so much in my past. There was a lot of us though. There was a lot of guys when I was a kid. That's when I was really, really young. But yeah, we just kind of hung around. But I think I think me and Jason. Were the first one. I think that's the first person I was with when I smoked pot. It was me and Jay. We got some from school, and we went out. Well, forgive me for the glorification. We went out to school, and we went out to the woods and made a soda can, and we thought we were so cool, man. We didn't
the soda can pipe.
The soda can pipe.
I made those too.
Yeah. So
you know what we're talking about?
You just
never mind.
Punch some holes in a soda can. So. We thought we were so cool, but me and him used to laugh. We had fun together, man. We were tight. He actually, and I will mention this because I think it's important. He actually committed suicide a couple of years ago.
It's too bad. Sorry to hear that.
I think it's important to talk about that sometimes.
Sure. Yeah.
But he was a really good kid, but addiction had also gotten a hold of him, and as we know, the hopelessness sometimes can be devastating to some people and hard to climb out of. But Jason was, I remember him the most because we stayed friends even though we moved to different. He came to Connecticut long before me. He was out in Windsor Locks and stuff. And I used to come out to Connecticut and visit him, and we'd go skateboarding around Windsor Locks, and get kicked out by the cops. Get out of here! So, but yeah, he was one of my closest friends. And then, but I've had different stages of close friends.
Yeah.
And then my other friend was Steven. This was a little later on in life, if we're talking about friends. He was my all-time best friend until I was into my adulthood. I made a very bad mistake. And his wife, his wife won't let me talk to him or be friends with him anymore. That's a touchy one too. Getting emotional.
Are you going to leave it out like that? Or
No, I will tell you about it. In active addiction, I was hanging out with these girls that used heroin. This is when I first started using heroin. I think I was probably 18. And I had bags of heroin in my pocket, and Steven had already had a child in his house, and I went over there, and I dropped a bag of dope in his house.
Oh.
And I made a very bad mistake.
We do
God,
that.
Phil, you got me all.
No, we do. We do that, and we do that in our addiction, and we're still, as we heal, these things come up, and we deal with them. And I think the hardest person to forgive is ourselves, right? And I forgive you for that, but what does my forgiveness do? You have to forgive yourself, right? And you know who's forgiven you for that.
Of course, yes.
Right.
And I do forgive myself. And his mom always supports me on my recovery stuff and everything else. And I think his family forgave me, but still, like, you lose your best friend. And then, I mean, we were best friends from like our whole, probably like the same time, like as me and Jason, we were all friends. And then, like, I was friends with him. He was like my best friend,
Mm-hmm. And so when he found the dope,
and they thought the kid had taken it.
Oh my gosh!
And there was like this thing with DCF. I just, the wreckage that we do in active addiction is. And we just don't know. And of course, I would never harm him or anybody. You know what I mean?
Right.
I think, we try to teach our children as they're growing up to know that there is unanticipated outcomes for behaviors, right?
Mm-hmm.
Right.
You can't, our teenagers have been so sure that nothing bad is going to happen if they do A, B, C, or D. And you try to highlight some of the things that could potentially happen, and I'm always the risk-averse person. And, Phil, yeah. So I think particularly with addiction, you have no idea. You have no idea when you're using what could potentially happen. You can't even predict it sometimes. You could have never predicted that.
That's one of the definitions of how I've framed my use of alcohol, that I could never safely predict what was going to happen, ever, because I didn't know if I was going to be the lover, the fighter, the clown, but I could be all three in the same night. Any night I drank, I could, but I never knew which one it was going to be. Well, it looks like we got him quiet. I'm a little unusual. That's a little unusual.
Okay?
I'm sorry. The child was absolutely fine.
Yeah.
Everything turned out. But like, I love children, so it's like the one thing for me is like, if I ever unintentionally hurt a child, it's like something that I can never forgive myself for.
Right. Gotcha.
It's just like one of those things.
No, I'm with you. That's one of the things, teaching our kids to drive. My worst fear, I don't want them to get hurt, but the potential of them hurting a child because of the areas that they happen to be driving is always.
Yep.
on my
Slow
heart.
down in the neighborhoods.
Backing up, all that stuff.
I was lucky. My daughter's a very good driver. Not the little one. I also have an soon to be 18-year-old. So this Monday she goes to college, and she's going to criminal justice in West Haven to college. So it's super exciting.
See what he did there? He jumped out of his past because he was and said,
we can go back, but
no,
I'm super proud of her, and I do have two. So one's 18 months, one's almost 18 years old. So there's a huge gap in between my kids too. So it's
we have almost that. We have 17 and 32, so that's 15. No,
she's gonna be 35.
Wow. No.
34 this year.
34. So 34 and 16.
Yeah.
Same thing. 18.
Wow.
So I have a 34-year-old daughter, and then Sandy and I have, can you get all the ages right? Joshua?
Almost 27, 25, 19, 16.
Yep.
Wow.
So we know what the age, and I grew up 4 kids, and then 14 years later I arrived. So that is a unique family situation for sure. So how did you end up with that 18-year-old? I'm taking it back. All right, well, okay.
Sandy, I know it took us a while to figure out what was happening, but I think, most of us know how we end up with a child.
Phil Valentine. Anyway, I'm taking you back. 18 years. What was happening?
Or even
Where were
that.
you?
Well, I want to hear that, he's only in the teens. I do want to hear, like,
We got
you said
the
you were good at some things, like not so good at school. You were good at skateboarding. Were you an athlete at all? Did you play sports?
No, so even till this day, I really could care less about sports.
Right.
I have like this real. I mean, I did play. So when I was a kid, I played soccer for Holy Name. We did win a trophy, but and then I played baseball once or twice, and I did play football and different stuff. But I didn't really care about sports. I think I just did it for connection.
Well, skateboarding is a sport too.
Yeah, and I wasn't really much good at most sports.
So what happened when your high school days were over?
My high school days were over the day they started. So my high school days were very. So I spent 2 years in ninth grade in Agawam. When I got kicked out of there, I spent another 2 years in ninth grade in Chicopee.
So you went to ninth grade for 4 years?
Correct.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's like a record, isn't it?
It is. But I did pass my GED without even blinking an eye.
Yeah,
and
doesn't surprise me.
When they sent me the scores, I was in like the 90 percentile. I still have them till this day. I was like in the 90 percentile for everything.
You probably didn't study.
Not at all.
Yeah.
I went and took it. My brother that passed away forced me to go with him to take the test. He's like, "You're going to get your GED?" I'm like, "I don't need it." He's like, "You're going." He's like, "Because you're going to go with me and I need to go get mine." And I got mine without blinking an eye, and my poor brother failed the first time.
Oh.
Yes, and he was livid, man. My brother was a firecracker. He was like, "I can't believe this." So, but he did end up getting his GED, and he actually ended up. He wasn't able to go through the whole police academy later on in life because of his heart condition, but he did become what they call a special police officer, where he did like events and different things like that. So he went from also having kind of a troubled youth to wanting to change his life around when he was older too. So my brother didn't really do drugs. He wasn't an addict or anything like that. But he was very much so like into the Sopranos a little too much. Let's put it that way. So he was a little much sometimes, but I love him, man. Yeah.
Okay, so I misunderstood when you said that he passed away in early recovery. It was your recovery.
It's my recovery.
Gotcha.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, I was 3 years.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank goodness. Right?
How many years of recovery are you now?
11,
Cool.
11 and some change.
All right.
July 4th was my.
All right. So what did you do to, like, pay bills or get by?
In early recovery?
No, when
You got your GED.
After your
goodness.
4
You're a
years of
grown-up.
ninth grade.
Oh, well, yeah, let's take it back there.
Yeah.
So, no, I was homeless for... So,
What?
Oh, I was homeless for a very, very long time. So, not after my GED, like my mom, but my addiction was always ever evolving, faster and faster and faster. So, yeah, I'd gone with my brother to get my GED, but I was already kind of a recluse. My addiction, so I've been to maybe like over 20 detoxes, I think, and I've been to about 7 programs, and every time I just didn't get it. My last program was Teen Challenge in New Haven, and then the Salvation Army in the North End here in Hartford. And I've been, clean sober ever since. So, but back when I was a kid and I got my GED and all that stuff, my brother forced me to do it because he wanted me to try to do better in life because he's seen that I was, but me and my brother had a couple falling outs. That's what I meant. Like, I finally had that relationship that was strong, like when we were little, when he passed away, because, I had lost that, my addiction. He didn't understand addiction, especially when I had my daughter, 18 years ago. He'd be like, he's like, you have a kid, you need to just stop using it. He's like, you could stop using, you could do it. He's like, I don't understand why you have a child, why you won't just stop using drugs. And I wish it was just that simple. Because I tried so many times. I went to so many detoxes, and my brother picked me up from treatments, like out in the woods somewhere, like in Massachusetts, Rhode Island. I've been just about everywhere they would try to send me as far as they could so that like I couldn't escape. You know, oh, I'm sorry.
Phil. You're fine.
But yeah, so my, you know, I'd say like from, I think I was like 22. I think it was about 5 years that I was homeless. I believe it was like the 15th time I was at Providence Hospital in Massachusetts. The lady had called me and the thing. She's like, "Yeah, you can't stay here." And I was like, "Why?" She's like, no. She's like, "I'm giving you 3 days and you're going to go downstairs and you're going to get on the methadone clinic." And she's like, "And you're never coming back here." And they basically blacklisted me from the detox because I was using it. So as I do, I was kind of using it as a shelter until when it got real hard, I'd go to detox again when it got real hard. But it was like an every 2-month thing for years. And finally she was just like, "No, you're going downstairs." She's like, "Detox isn't working for you."
Where's Providence Hospital? Is it in Providence?
It's in Holyoke.
Holyoke.
Yeah, but it's
okay.
called Providence Hospital.
Gotcha.
Holyoke, Mass. Yeah, right. Not very far from where we use at.
It's always such a surprise to me to hear you telling this story about being homeless for 5 years, revolving around in and out of detoxes. I can't even imagine what your street life was like and how you were, all of that, and trying to align it with the person I'm seeing talking to us now. It doesn't seem like the same person, does it?
I listen to this story and think of how perfectly his experiences would equip him to do exactly what he's doing today.
Yeah.
I agree with you. That's why I love doing what I do today. But yes, the street life was traumatizing to say the least. I've been through things that I don't wish on anybody. I did get in trouble with the law when I was in North Carolina. Did I even mention that I tried to go to North Carolina to get clean? So I know I skip around a lot, but yeah. So at one point in time, my uncle, my mom's brother, Al, had taken me to North Carolina to try to. The geographical change didn't work.
Just move into their house or go to a treatment setting or do just
No,
move?
I moved down to his house. He owned a limo company, and he was like, "You're going to come work for me."
Where in North Carolina?
Raleigh. Well, he was, so it was near Raleigh. We worked, our company was kind of like a Raleigh company, which is the capital, but it was over in Wendell, like next to Zebulon, Knightdale, or kind of places people might know. But Wendell is like Johnson County. It's like out in the... It's not really like any type of city, and it's only like this big. So,
So there's some unusual thinking. Let me take a nephew who has a strong addiction and put him behind the wheel of a limousine.
Yeah. Well, I had just got out of treatment when he took me.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, but I had already. The minute I got out of treatment, I called up some girl and we started smoking dope again, and you know. I was already back in my mind running, so when I went to North Carolina, first thing I did after being there for a week was like, well, I got to find out where the connects are here. So my mind, I didn't change anything. I took me with me, and I think that's an important thing for a lot of us when we share in recovery is I have the disease of addiction. So, like, I have to combat the disease of addiction. Even, it doesn't matter where I am on the planet, I still have the disease of addiction. So I thought that, like, if I went down there, that, like, I could just smoke weed safely. You know what I mean? Like, the geographical change, the substitution for one for another, all those things that I thought would somehow, well, I can't quit doing this. That's what I would tell myself. Well, I have to have something. There's no way I could be sober. You know, I'm like, well, I at least have to drink. You know, like, that was my mindset. And, come to find out, I'm the kind of guy, my pathway has to be abstinence-based because I can't do anything safely. It always ends me up to the same exact thing over and over again. And I've tried so many different ways through all those years. I have been up and down, you know.
You know how we at CCAR tell our stories, right? The storytelling piece. I'm going to push you a little bit. I know you're surprised. What was your darkest moment in your addiction history?
My darkest moment is in the winter. One winter, I had missed the shelter. I was getting loaded, and I missed going to the shelter, and I got angry with them, started cussing, and I was like, well, whatever, well, I'm going to go get high then. And when I was already getting high, so I went over to Holyoke. So basically, it was wintertime. I was freezing to death.
Were you walking around?
I was walking.
Yeah.
Probably like in a hoodie and maybe like some jeans and sneakers.
Did you have any clothes on you at all?
I lived out of like a backpack. My mom tried to help. Like when I was homeless for all that time, she would like bring me different clothes and stuff. But I lived out of a backpack for years.
Wow.
Yeah, I lived out of a backpack for years, and
that's longer than any Appalachian Trail through hike.
Oh my God! Sure. And I got really good exercise too back then. So I would walk for days and days and days. But this one specific day, it was freezing, like negative. It was like negative. It gets real cold sometimes. I don't know, like in the tens, -10, something like that. And it had been a couple of days, and when the drugs started to wear off, I realized that I was freezing to death. Like my bones, like it just started coming through me, and I realized that I couldn't feel my toes, I couldn't feel my hands, so I had to break into a building and sleep next to a boiler. I wish I could say that was the driving force, but it wasn't. After I warmed up, and the next day I went to keep on going. But that was a dark moment. When I think about that time now where I almost froze to death, and how I had to come to, in my recovery pathway, it talks about resorting to an animalistic level. I felt almost less than human having to sleep next to a boiler.
And what were you eating at this time, or were you?
No.
No?
I lived on double cheeseburgers maybe like every other day from McDonald's. Like if I could get $2 and my stomach was, if I was so hungry where I felt like I was going to die if I didn't eat, I would spend the $2. But spending money for somebody that's in active addiction is very tough when you need the next one. So for me...
This is naive, but how did you even get money for drugs?
Selling
is the obvious
We're not going to
thing?
self-incriminate ourselves.
Okay.
But I did work, like I would find people like and work, and to tell you the truth, I was a master manipulator. I used people. I've made a lot of amends in my recovery. But I was a user, and I didn't just use drugs. I used people because I didn't know what else to do, because I was so in the grips that I didn't really have any choice. And most of the time I couldn't use people, so we do things, we boost, we do all kinds of stuff to get the next one.
Well, I think all the statute of limitations
is over on that. Yeah, it's been 11 years. So we steal stuff, we do different stuff. When you live on the street, and a lot of times I stole to eat. I lived on like those snacks that were right next to the front door. It's easy to walk to the back if nobody's looking. I walk by and I'd snap, and maybe that would be the only thing I ate all day. For a whole day would have been like a honey bun. Whatever you could snatch as quick as you can, because you don't want to go to jail.
Right.
Over a 25-cent honey bun, right?
Yeah.
So
Phil still likes honey buns.
Yeah, I do on occasion. They were a great
pies.
Trail food.
Oh, those are good.
I just and was there, oftentimes people think there's a homeless community. Were you involved in a community, or were you pretty much just isolated?
So, no, I wasn't. But there is a lot of homeless communities, there's tons of homeless communities. Right. Yes, that's actually a big thing that a lot of people don't know about. It's, but I guess I knew some of the people, but I didn't really stay with them. I was a walker. Like I would try to sleep during the day by myself when it was warm for maybe like an hour or two. And when I would wake up, I would start walking again. So I might have walked like Forrest Gump style, like halfway. If I added up all my steps, I might have made it halfway across America
or farther
in those years, Another reason, probably.
No.
I used to walk and walk and walk and walk and walk.
Where
I never
were
stopped.
you? Where were you? Where'd you walk to?
Springfield. I'd walk West Springfield, Holyoke, just anywhere where I felt like I can continue going where I was going, and I wasn't going anywhere.
Did anybody know you?
Oh, I know tons of people. Yeah,
Right.
even till this day. I stay away from Springfield. It's been 11 years, but I guarantee you I go there. There's a lot of people I know. I did go to the NA convention there, but and I did meet I actually seen a couple people that I used with that were at the convention, and you know, I pray for them all the time. They were just getting into early recovery. But I have ran into people that are trying to make it out there.
What do you think it would be like to walk through some of those old streets today for you?
So when I went to the convention, me and my sponsor, he drove through some of the streets,
right.
and I showed him the place where I used to go in and bathe in the sink. I brought him in there. So there's this place called like Tower Square.
Yeah.
I think they probably still call it that, but they've done so much work in Springfield with the casino. I don't know but Tower Square, there used to be a Dunkin' Donuts there, and like if you go up the escalator, there was a bathroom that like nobody would bother. You could go into the bathroom, and I used to wash up in there and change out my clothes.
And what was it like to go in there?
Sober.
It didn't actually affect me like I thought it would.
How about
I
that?
used the bathroom, and I was just like, well, that's where I used to take a bath, kind of, sort of. He's like, wow. He's like, really? I'm like, yeah. And he's like, you know, and this was when I had like 8 years, but for somebody with like, at the time he had only a couple of years, it seems like, wow, this is amazing, you know?
It is amazing.
But for me, it was nothing. I was like, you want a sandwich? And then I bought him a sandwich. Because I love him. I've had the same sponsee for 7 years.
Yeah, that's cool.
Sponsoring one of the same guys, yeah.
So let's take you up to Teen Challenge in New Haven. And how'd you end up there? And
Do you already have your daughter? Your oldest daughter?
yeah.
Oh, yeah. My oldest daughter...
she had to be 6 or 7.
When I got clean, she was 6.
Yeah.
Yeah, she had just turned 6. Because she's not 18 yet.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, she had just turned 6. I actually have a picture of me, my brother, and my mom, and my daughter when she was just 6. She was so cute, little pigtails and stuff, at the Teen Challenge. So just recently I changed my date to July 4th because the picture from when I went there, I actually used to think it was June 6th.
Mm-hmm.
And I realized that my sobriety date is actually July 4th.
Mm-hmm.
My mom's been saying that for the last couple of years, but, you know, we know best.
Right.
So she's been like, no, it's in July. I'm like, no, it's June. I'm like, I know. She's like, no, you don't.
That's kind of cool. Independence Day. Independence from
Yeah.
So,
freedom.
but I do remember Teen Challenge. So I was on 140 milligrams of methadone.
Mm-hmm.
I was
Is
active.
that a lot or a little?
That's a lot.
Okay, just so people know.
Yeah,
understand.
that's a real lot.
Mm-hmm.
And I was actively, you know, smoking and shooting cocaine, benzos. I was really addicted to Xanax.
You're such a mess.
I was a mess. I was a mess, man. And I was super addicted to benzos for a very, very long time. And yeah, this time I didn't do a detox. I didn't do anything. I just went to Teen Challenge and surrendered. And I detoxed there. They let me detox there with Tylenol and Benadryl. That's what I detoxed there with. And, you know, they prayed for me. And after about 4.5 months, I left there to go to the Salvation Army. But it took me about 4.5 months to sleep, even a little bit. I had to teach my body how to sleep again. I'd be up all night, like every hour on the hour, because I didn't know how to sleep anymore. It had been a long, long time. And then you just kind of, sleeping was just like more or less like power napping through your existence.
Yeah.
Kind of, sort of. And I had to learn how to sleep again. And once I could finally sleep again, I didn't really want to be at Teen Challenge anymore. And I wanted to be somewhere where I could choose my own pathway of recovery. I love everything about Teen Challenge, except for I wanted to go to meetings and I wanted to be involved, and I think everybody should have the right to choose their pathway. And I wanted to be a part of a 12-step fellowship, and they didn't allow it there. And I remember when I was 18 all the way till I got clean at 28, that I used to go to meetings and people treated me with love, and they understood me. They understood me.
Right.
Like, and I felt like a lot of these people didn't understand me there, and I couldn't really be myself, and you couldn't really talk about drugs or any of this stuff that happened to you. So, I mean, God bless them. It's a great program, but it wasn't for me for the long haul. So Salvation Army was it. And I stayed there for about 11 months after that. And then
in Hartford.
In Hartford, yeah.
How'd you even find it? How'd you find that resource?
I have no idea.
Mm-hmm.
It's like your higher power just puts things in your life and you have no idea where they came from.
Yeah.
Kind of like Teen Challenge. So to back up, how did I get to Teen Challenge is what Phil asked. How I got there is my cousin was a pastor. And this was my moment of clarity that happened in my life. So I think that's important to share with you guys is I had been, and this was summertime, mind you, so I had just gone through the most brutal winter. I think we had like 5 feet of snow that winter, and I was just trudging through it like a champ, in shoes, no boots, like, it was just as insanity could get. And like, I made my decision and had my moment of clarity when the sun was shining, and it was like 92 degrees out. The perfect day to just be like, maybe tomorrow. But I called my mom, and I had come to a place where I was just like, she's like, will you go to church with me? And I looked back, and this is how I know my day is right, because Sunday when I went with her was actually the 4th of July had fell on that day. So I was like, okay, Ma, you're right. So she had brought me to my cousin Ornella's house, and my cousin Ornella was praying with me, and she said to me, if you don't leave Springfield and go to Teen Challenge today, she's like, you're going to die.
She said that.
Just like that. And something shot through me like I never believed anything anybody had said in my entire life as much as I believed my cousin at that point in time. And she said, if you don't leave, you will die. And I absolutely believed her. And my mom wasn't standing. I don't think my mom was standing there. She like leaned over and whispered to me, like, thus say the Lord type stuff. And it literally like shock-waved me.
No.
And I was like, all right, I'll go. And at that moment, I literally surrendered. And it wasn't easy because I snuck money into that place, and there was heroin across the street every night when I couldn't sleep. And I was shivering and shaking and slamming my legs on the bed and just so sick but I just didn't give up. I didn't give up, and thank God for that.
It's because they weren't her words.
Yeah, exactly. And when she said that to me, I've never believed anything in my life, even till this day, more than I believed her at that moment. She was like, if you don't leave here, you're going to die.
And you were this was in Springfield? Where were you?
Well, yeah, so
you were in Springfield, but she said you got to go to Teen Challenge in New Haven.
Yes.
Isn't that wild?
That is wild, especially.
Wow.
Well, she lived kind of close to Springfield. It was like Belchertown. Where did she used to live? Wilbraham or something like that.
But it wasn't like a place close by. It was Teen Challenge New Haven.
No, it was far away.
Right.
Yeah, it was far away. My Uncle Albert had gone to Teen Challenge and then Salvation Army, just like me. Mm-hmm. And he had stayed sober till he died.
So what was your Salvation Army experience like?
I love the Salvation Army.
Mm-hmm.
They treated me good. They taught me how to be a productive member of society.
We're pretty close to the Salvation Army, right?
We are. So I brought a meeting back to the Salvation Army. I used to do a meeting there for on and off for about 7 years. They actually just had to close down COVID. Now, they're not closed down everywhere, but the Hartford Center closed down after, I think it was there for like 20 years. Wow. It was heartbreaking to me. So this was an emotional thing that happened a couple months ago that I really had to work through because it broke my heart. That center saved a lot of people, man. A lot of people's lives. And they closed it down, which is very, very unfortunate.
Wow.
It used to house like 130 people.
Yeah, I didn't know that. I didn't know they had closed.
To come out like 2 months ago.
Wow. Sorry to hear that. So are you working while you're at the Salvation Army?
It's work therapy.
Yeah. So what were you doing?
A little bit of everything. So I started in what they call brick and brack, was like the warehouse, bringing in, somebody goes to donate stuff, we bring it in the wheelie, we sort it out, things like that. And then I was in the other warehouse part. And then one day, the captain there, Miss Saunders, she was so great to me, man. She was like, listen, she's like, there's so many people here right now. She's like, would you mind just like being like the grounds guy? Because at the time the deck had broke and everybody was smoking outside, throwing cigarettes everywhere. She's like, I just want you to clean up out here, clean up the parking lot across the street, and like over here on the side or stuff. And she's like, and you can pick whoever you want to help you. So I got my buddy Trent. I'm like, hey, let's go over here. And so we basically just walked around and like took care of the grounds. Made sure we picked up, there's a lot of paraphernalia on that side of town. So we'd make sure the parking lot was clean. There was no, so we just kind of like hung around. We strapped a boom box. We drilled 2 holes and then like we had this big rolling trash barrel. So we like took these ropes and threw it around and strapped a radio to the top of the thing. So we'd walk around with the radio and our little, the grabbers.
Oh, yeah.
Picking up the trash.
Orca.
We loved it. Yeah, we absolutely loved it. It was the best. So my last months there, I just took care of the outside, and I smoked at the time too. I smoked cigarettes at the time.
Yeah.
So I used to, like, when I go out to smoke, put it in the bucket. So I was like the enforcer outside. Make sure you put it in the bucket. So.
Well, you left, and where did you go, and what did you end up doing?
I went to, so after the Salvation Army, believe it or not, one of my friends, Larry, that I was at the Salvation Army with, he found this pastor, Pastor Bodie in New Britain. And Pastor Bodie, man, God bless him, man. Like, he let me and Larry, like, get one of his apartments for nothing. And he was like, listen, when you guys get some money, he's like, just pay me rent when you get it. And me and Larry are just looking at each other like, is this real? And he's like, yeah, you can have that downstairs. He's like, there's 2 bedrooms, kitchen, everything. He's like, so and I lived there for a while, for like a long time. And Larry unfortunately went his way. I don't know where he went at that time. I've previously, I know where he is now, but I don't know at that time where he had went. But I had stayed there for a little while, but I wanted to get my own place and start fresh. And I knew if I didn't come back to Hartford, I couldn't do that. So I had worked with a program over on at CRT. It's not there anymore. It wasn't the CRTs like everybody thinks. It used to say home, and it was right at the beginning where the park is.
Yeah, I know where that is.
If you take a left there, it says home. That building used to help people. It had a program that, like, for 2 years, if you worked with the case manager there, you would get subsidized housing for an apartment. And when I came back, but it took me a while to get on that. When I came back, I stayed in the North End at the House of Bread for about 9 months.
Wow.
And I still worked in New Britain. So I took the bus from the House of Bread all the way to New Britain every single day for a long, long time. And so from there, I went to I got my first apartment, which was in Elmwood, like right between Hartford and West Hartford.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, right next to the CVS, which was that group, the NA group across there was my home group for like 2 years.
I lived right around the corner from there for a while.
Okay.
Yeah.
I love it there. I still love Elmwood.
My first job was Puritan Furniture Mart, one of them in early recovery.
Where's it?
Puritan Furniture. It's a big store in Elmwood. Yeah.
I used to love the Elmwood. Elmwood Pizza used to be owned by this old couple. I think they were great people. They were the best. I used to go there every Friday after the meeting. It's not owned by them anymore, but I don't even know why I mentioned that. But I used to love it. It was like, I don't know, it was comfort food. It was like one of those things. I did it every Friday, and me and guys would leave the meeting, go there. It was like our spot to
You had a
meeting
routine.
after the meeting.
You had a routine, a connection.
We
that
were
kept-
driving through a town that we were in early recovery together and pointing out, hey, remember that pizza place, that Friendly's, that
Yeah.
pizza place?
Mhm.
We had a lot of that going on too.
Yeah.
So
Those
you
routines.
guys are both in recovery together.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Me and my wife
He
too.
had a 3-year head start on me.
I had a 3-year head start, and our dates would I'd take her to a recovery meeting.
Yeah.
I was
Yeah.
a big spender.
That's awesome.
Yep.
But she had to buy her
Sometimes
own
he-
ice cream at Friendly's.
I was going to say, sometimes you buy the coffee at the meeting, but I'd buy the
You had
ice
a much
cream.
better job than I
I
did.
had a job.
That's awesome.
Yeah, we've been to, so it's how many years and we've been doing that? 30?
30.
30 years
30
together
years.
doing that. Yeah.
30 years I
That's
kissed
amazing.
him
One
in a
day
driveway.
at a time, though.
You gotta
One
be
day.
careful.
Don't tell him that story. Would you like to
Tell you
conduct
later,
an
Dominic.
experiment?
He asked me if I'd want to conduct an experiment, which was to kiss him.
Not really.
Smooth
I'm-
operator.
I would say that's the last thing I would call myself is a smooth operator. So I'm still waiting until you get this job before you get into to CCAR, and you talk about like, I mean, you had a tough job. Weren't you like delivering stuff
Oh yeah. So after
and driving truck?
I'm
and
not
delivering?
crying the whole time either. So you guys know I have chronic water eye thing.
Mhm.
So because I keep doing that, I don't want everybody to think that I'm like constantly. So I had when I was working. So I worked at Advanced Auto Parts. The guy was the first person to give me a shot.
Mm-hmm.
I worked there for about 4 years. It's actually. It is my longest job in recovery was Advanced Auto Parts. There used to be a guy that would come in because I worked a warehouse, so it was so cool. I started to drive parts, and then this old guy in the back that ran the warehouse had quit one day, and he gave me another shot. He's like, "Listen, I want you to run the department." He's like, "I like your work ethic."
Mm-hmm.
I was like, "Really?" He's like, "Yeah, full-time benefits." I'm like, for me, it was like. Oh, I was like, dude, full time and benefits. Like, I
Right.
mean, they didn't pay me much, but
Mhm.
as I worked, through it, they gave me raises and stuff, and they kind of took care of me for what that company pays, And but you know what? Everybody at that job when my brother passed away was so supportive, and did like this big donation thing to help me and my mom with the funeral and stuff. So. Kudos to them, man. Like, they were really good guys, man. And everybody didn't like my boss, but I liked my boss. Like, me and him clicked for some reason, but everybody was like, I'm not going to say his name there. Like, rah, 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 rah. I'm like, he's good to me.
Right.
Like, it's one of those things. I'm like, I like him.
Yeah.
I just like people in general, but.
Well, given how you lived on the streets, you probably had to learn how to get along with just about everybody.
I am very culturally competent, as we say.
Yeah.
I am very open-minded to everything and everyone, and I find a lot of people fascinating.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love people.
Curious.
Very.
Yeah.
So the guy in the back when I was working in the warehouse was, he was like, he's like, you should go get your Class A, and I'm like, I should go get my Class A. And he would come in, and this went on for like a year. It's not like he's like, you should go, and I went right to school. This went on for a year. I'd be like, I'm going to get it. He's like, you going to go to school or what? I'm like, procrastination. Scared to succeed. Scared to do anything outside my comfort zone. I'm just going to stay in this small little room and work here. That's it. I'm good with that. I'm safe. I'm in recovery.
Mm-hmm.
But no, I took, with faith, I worked full-time and I went to school full-time on the weekends. And I went and I got my Class A.
Which is what?
So
Class A is a driver's license.
It is a driver's
Okay.
license. So I was a 18-wheeler driver. I have all the endorsements, even till this day.
Mm-hmm.
So I drive just about anything with wheels on it. And I did it for a long time. But there was something missing.
Mm-hmm.
So I drove a truck for a long time. Great way to make money. I bought my first house in Manchester. We lived in Manchester over on Devon for a long time.
Mm-hmm.
We don't anymore, but I'm not going to say where I live.
You didn't even tell us what town you live in?
No, because I don't know who's watching this. I don't know if people know where I live. I'm only kidding. I'm only kidding. I tell people all the time. I live in South Windsor now.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm like right next to you guys. So,
right.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But we had our first house. That was our very first home. When Grace was born, we decided we needed to move somewhere with the school system.
What are you saying? We? Who's we?
My wife. My wife, Lauren.
Yeah.
Yeah. She's also in recovery, and she's probably going to be like, really, dude? But that's okay, because I love your guys' story. But Lauren actually had more time than I did, like you did. Mm-hmm. And we've been together almost 9 years, almost 10 years. So
wow.
Yeah, we're getting there. Mm-hmm. We met at the Salvation Army. She was doing a women's group. I used to run a men's group. To help guys with their recovery and spiritual stuff like that. And that's how we met. And we were friends for a long time before we ever dated. Wow. Yeah, we were friends for years before we ever went out and stuff. And I think that made a good relationship.
Yeah,
right.
Friendship is a great foundation for a marriage.
So you're driving truck, you bought your first house in Manchester, and something was missing.
Yeah, I was isolated all the time. I felt like there was points where I felt like I was in active addiction again. Like I was out there walking with nobody and I was by myself again. It was, if I didn't have as much time as I had and had done as much work on my recovery as I did, there was points in my truck driving career that I surely would have used. Mm-hmm. In all honesty. There was times that I thought about it. There was times that I planned to do it. There was times where I almost did it. But by God's grace, I didn't. Mm-hmm. And that's probably why I'm sitting here today.
Right.
But, so it was, what was missing was I love people and I love being around people. And I was isolated in a truck and I wasn't helping anybody. And, what really made me want to do what I do today is when, and what really opened my mind to multiple pathways and different things that I didn't even know there was so much in the recovery world, is when I was driving trucks, my wife one day was like, we're going to go to Washington, D.C. to United to Face Addiction. I'm like, what's that? I'm a basement guy. I do my recovery in the basement. I have no clue what you're talking about, I was a very creature of habit, I'm like, no, I go over here. This is what I do for recovery, And she was like, we're going to go to Washington, D.C. It changed my life.
We were there.
It changed my life. You guys were there?
Yeah.
That was just a few days after I finished hiking the Appalachian Trail.
We reunited with all our kids at that event.
Yeah.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah.
It was such a great event. Mm-hmm. And I was talking to people there, and, I'm like, yeah, where are you? I'm like, what fellowship you go to? They're like, I'm going to fellowship, and they, explain to me what they do, and, I'm, walking around, and I'm meeting all these different people. I'm like, what's going on here right now? Mm-hmm. And I realized, and I'm like, these people were telling me about this, and I started to learn about all these pathways and all these different things people were doing, and I was like, I enjoy doing that stuff, too. They're like, I'm like, really? I'm like, you use that for your recovery? Absolutely. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, wow. Mm-hmm. And even the story that I love writing, and then we have the event coming up, I write poetry and spoken word stuff, and it's so amazing. We didn't get into recovery not to be us, to enjoy ourselves, right? And there's so many different pathways, and I understand that now. There's so many great things to do in recovery. I don't have to hide in the basement,
mm-hmm.
And I realized that day, and I was like, wow, I wish I could do something like that. And a couple years later, I started hearing all this stuff about recovery coaching and recovery coach trainings. So I decided to stop by Hartford, check out the CCAR Center, started coming by, heard that there was a training going on. I was like, you know what? I want to get involved with CCAR. I'm like, but, because I still had to work all the time, I'm like, I can't do it like everybody else is doing because I have to work full-time and truck driving is brutal. It's like I could work 60, 70 hours a week, you know? Mm-hmm. And I was like, I'm just going to pay for all the classes, and I'm going to go. And I'm going to be a recovery coach. So I came in, and I forget who was working, but I'm like, I want to take the class. And she's like, oh, okay, which one? I'm like, all of them. She's like, all of them? I'm like, yeah. I'm like, can you cut me like a small deal? I want to take all of them.
A package.
She's like, okay. So she walked in the office and was like, this guy wants to take all of them. I'm like, I want to take all of them. So I took every single training that CCAR had, and I fell in love with CCAR.
Mm-hmm.
Oh my god!
In these trainings, I took
awesome
every single one of them. I took ethical. I took EDRC coaching in the recovery. I took. I met this awesome guy. Today, why I wear black is because of one of my trainings for professionalism. This guy that came and did the training was from West Virginia, and I used to love this song. The only good memory I had with my dad was a Johnny Cash song about wearing black, and this guy came in and played that song, and I knew, because I was at a point of forgiveness with my father, like the spiritual thing that happened in that training and in all the different trainings told me that I was where I was supposed to be.
Was he a pastor? The guy
he was a pastor,
yeah, I know,
and he was also a politician, and he had like 7 hats.
Yeah.
But he was such a cool guy, and we would talk in between in the breaks and stuff, and I was like, and he was a chaplain too, and
right.
I've always like, so before recovery coaching, I had thought about doing chaplain work, and I just love, helping like first responders. Right? I always love the idea of, help the people that help people,
mm-hmm.
and that's what we do.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? Like, but all different hats of helping people, transform people,
mm-hmm.
and I absolutely love that,
mm-hmm.
and it's true, because I was transformed. I am definitely not the person, and I didn't even get into all the bad stuff. Like, I am not that person anymore, and I've definitely been transformed through the recovery process, and
mm-hmm.
But I don't close the door on the story part about it, and I share it with recoveries and people that I meet because I want them to know that recovery is possible. Mm-hmm. Like, even through all that trauma, even through all that stuff that I've been through, growing up in different things, like, recovery has given me a life that is so amazing, and given me children that are amazing, and a wife that's amazing, and, and a job and a company that's amazing. Let's like, when people are like, where you are? I'm like, I work for CCAR. What do you do? I'm like, I plant seeds of hope. They're like,
mm-hmm.
what? I'm like, all day long. That's what I do.
mm-hmm.
And they're like, what does that mean? I'm like, let me tell you what it means.
Mm-hmm.
You mentioned it. One of the first things you said was the hopelessness of that a friend of yours had, like utter hopelessness. And I was just reading some notes that I took from the Multiple Pathways Recovery Conference 2 years ago, just yesterday. And Don Koyas said that hope helps us transcend our circumstances.
Mm-hmm.
And so, the number of times you had to go through the doors, thank God nobody said you hit your quota.
Mm-hmm.
And I, there are mechanisms in place in the world that tell you, you're done. You can't, I'm done with you. The door's not open to you anymore. And I just pray recovery just always stays open, because I was lucky to get it on my first try, but I'm a pretty rare circumstance. All these stories that we hear on the podcast, thank God the doors were open when the person wanted to try again. And it's okay to try again and try again, to have that seed of hope, to be hope workers, to plant those seeds so that they come back.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. So how did you hear about, what was your feeling about applying? How did you end up applying?
Oh, that's a good question. I don't know so I had taken the emergency room class, and my RCA actually was was put on by Mike Askew, and I had talked to him a lot, and different stuff, and found out a lot about CCAR, and Mike Askew was great, man, and then Stacy was my other facilitator, and she's just great too, man. Like, and they told me, like, I asked the right question.
Right.
Like, what do? We ask good questions, right? Like, as being a coach. And I asked good questions, and I got great answers. And I just kept asking questions, and somebody was like, we're going to be hiring. And I'm like, I'm going to be applying. Somebody told me, I forget exactly who it was that had told me that you guys were hiring. Oh, so I was going through, I think I was with John in Spirituality when you guys started hiring. And my wife shot it through. Yeah, by the way, CCAR's hiring right now. And I'm like, oh. So I went right home, filled out the thing. I think that was my very last class. It was my very last class that I applied to the emergency room, recovery coaching. Yeah.
That's awesome.
And that's where you started.
That is where I started. And I still love it. It's got a dear place in my heart. I started as an emergency room recovery coach for the first year I was here with CCAR. I loved it. And it's taught me so much, and it's made me 100 times the resource broker I used to be. I mean, I was pretty good. I always got myself in treatment, by the way, too. Those 19 times, the 7 times, except for the very last one where my cousin told me where I was going. I was really good at finding treatment when I needed it. So you were absolutely right when you were like, I think everything that you went through kind of prepared you to help other people find what they needed. And I think that's what, because I'm very persistent. So I was very good at helping people get to where they needed to get. Because when I needed to get somewhere, I'll knock on the door until they just finally were like, okay, just come in. I give up. This guy's never going to give up. I don't give up, just like in my recovery. I just don't give up. So, but I built a lot of great relationships. I love the emergency room. The leadership was fantastic. I love them, her to death. Being asked to do the DOC thing was like the biggest honor and privilege when I first was asked by the boss, the other boss, to come out and to do it. I was like, yeah, I'll absolutely do that. And then the really icing on the cake is when I was asked to do the MPD thing. I was just like, wow. Like when we had our staff meeting the other day, I said valued. I felt valued. I felt like I was valued, like as a coach, as somebody that really wants to like help people. I felt like I was valued because 2 different times somebody came and said, we love you as a coach. You're really good at doing what you do. We want you to do this. And I was like, wow. I'm like, I really feel good as a person, man. I really appreciate the opportunity to help the people that we serve,
Can you talk a little bit about what that looks like with Manchester Police Department?
Can I do that, boss?
You can.
Okay. So there's it's on a referral system. So if anybody that comes in interaction, so Manchester Police want to change the outlook and help people get into recovery instead of help people get into jail, which I think is a beautiful thing. That's the short form of it is the liaison, the lieutenant there, he gives everybody this form, and it's very easy. They just fill it out. They send it to me. It comes to me through a protected document, and I just kind of cold call them. But it's been very successful. Yeah, I'm a pretty good cold caller. I'm like, I'm here to sell you recovery.
All right.
Awesome.
But I just say, hey, recovery coach, man, how can I help you in your recovery? And people just, well, let me tell you what's happening. Okay. Yeah. I use exactly what we do at CCAR. I don't do anything different. I just, hey, man, this is Dominic. I'm a recovery coach, man. I really want to help you out. What can I do to help you in your recovery? I hit them with the same line every time. And they're like, well, this, and this. I'm like, okay, let's sit down and let me help you do whatever you need to do, man. We can figure it out. And whether it's treatment, IOP, whatever it is that they want, whether they want a different pathway, they don't want 12-step, they don't want, whatever they want, I help them find the way into recovery. So I know we're running time, so.
No, that's okay. But the last piece is, I know you to be a man of faith. Talk a little bit about how faith has played a role in your recovery.
Oh, wow. So I didn't think you were going to ask that here. Okay. Faith is my number one pathway. For me, my higher power, the Lord, however people say God, everybody has a choice of their understanding. But my higher power is exactly what is the most important thing in my recovery. I spend all my free time seeking Him, trying to build a better connection with Him, reading all kinds of stuff about Him and who He is and who He wants me to be. And I think that is the reason why I am who I am, because of Him.
Mm-hmm.
So my faith in God it's what got me into recovery anyway. I didn't go to a typical, and I came off of benzos, so I didn't know this till years later, that the amount of benzos I took on a daily basis, I could have very well died from detoxing by myself, and I had no clue about this. But God kept me.
Mm-hmm.
He just kept me. I don't even know how else to say it, man. With the amount of milligrams of methadone and the amount of benzos I took on a daily basis, I would have surely died. And I had no clue the severity of any of those things.
Mm-hmm.
I do now that I worked in the emergency rooms. I realize that. And I thank my lucky stars all the time. And I thank God all the time. Wow. I'm I could have definitely been a goner. But He told me to go there.
Mm-hmm. So do you want to name him? It's okay.
It's okay? All right. Well, I'm a Christian. I believe in the Lord Jesus Christ.
Mm-hmm. And that's what you owe your recovery in your life to. This is your pathway.
That is my pathway.
All right. Well, Dominic, I'm kind of mesmerized by your story, and just I can see how your mess is now a message and your test is now a testimonial. I thank you so much for joining CCAR and for following the Spirit, because I know you've helped hundreds of people already, and the best is yet to come.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dominic.
Thank you for having me.